Hi, hello students. Welcome to Indian Tech Guru for you. Let us move on to the next topic in input-output organization. The next topic is direct memory access. Direct memory access. So already we discussed that there are three different ways of data transmission between the peripheral devices and the main memory. So one is a programmed I/O, the second one is a interrupt initiated I/O, and the third one is a direct memory access. So in case of the programmed I/O, the drawback is polling. Polling means the CPU needs to continuously check for the status bit of the I/O device, whether the I/O device is ready for data transmission or not. So that the CPU actually the CPU is busy with polling rather than executing the instructions. So that is a basic problem with the programmed I/O. To avoid the drawback, we derived interrupt initiated I/O, in which instead of the CPU continuously checking for the I/O device readiness of the I/O device, the I/O device is going to send an interrupt signal to the CPU and telling that it is ready for data transmission. So during this interrupt initiated I/O also, the CPU needs to stop its current execution and service the interrupt service routine. So which is going to perform the data transmission. So during this data transmission, it needs to be verifying the data transmission without doing any other operation. So once again, the CPU is idle during the data transmission. So in both the programmed I/O as well as the interrupt initiated I/O, the CPU is idle because of the data transmissions as well as during the data transmission. So however, the actual work of the CPU is to execute the instructions rather than performing the I/O operations. So that is why don't we shift the work of the data transmission from CPU to some independent authority. So that independent authority is nothing but the direct memory access. So using direct memory access, block of data transfer from high-speed devices such as drum disk tape will be done. DMA controller interface allows I/O transfer directly between the memory and the device, freeing the CPU for other tasks. Because CPU has so many tasks, what are those tasks? It needs to execute the instructions. So that's why it is freed, and now the data transfers will be directly manipulated in between the memory as well as the I/O devices. CPU initializes the DMA controller by sending a memory address and the block size, that is number of words to be transmitted. So however, without the CPU intervention, nothing directly happens. That is why CPU initializes the DMA controller by sending the memory address. So that is from where the data should be transmitted, and the block size, how many number of words to be transmitted. Then the control will be passed to the DMA controller, and the DMA controller is going to perform the data transmission. So that is what happens in case of the direct memory access. So now let us see the CPU bus signals for data transfer. So in this diagram, you can see the CPU bus signals for DMA transfer. So there are two basic signals which are very important. Those are bus request, bus granted. Bus request, bus granted. So from the I/O device, a bus request will be initiated to the CPU. Then the CPU needs to give the bus granted BG signal to the I/O device. So before actually bus grant is initiated by the CPU, it needs to specify the address bus. It needs to give the address bus, data bus, as well as the read-write operation permissions to the DMA controller. So that is why when the bus granted is enabled, so the CPU will be in high impedance. That is, it is going to relinquish the total control of the buses and gives the total control of the buses to the DMA controller. So that the DMA controller is going to perform the data transmission without the intervention of the CPU. So in this diagram we can see the block diagram of the DMA controller. So as far as the DMA controller is concerned, initially the DMA select as well as the register select, these two control lines must be enabled so that the DMA controller is going to acquire the control. After that, the IO device is going to send a request to the CPU, which is known as the bus request, and if the CPU is willing to relinquish the control, then it is going to send the acknowledgement to the IO device through the bus grant. So DMA acknowledgement to the IO device. So once this bus grant has been initiated, then the entire control will be with the DMA controller. So the internal bus as well as the data bus will be under the control of the DMA controller. So based on the address register, that is the starting of the address location, as well as the word count register, how many words to be transmitted, and then the control register which is holding the control information. So it is going to perform the data transmission between the IO device as well as the memory unit. So here the word count will be reduced after each and every word is transmitted from the IO device to the main memory, or from the main memory to the IO device. So it can perform two different operations, read operation as well as the write operation. So this is the control logic provided for the data transmission directly between the IO device as well as the main memory, which is called as a DMA controller. The DMA controller is going to perform the data transmission in case of the direct memory access without the intervention of the CPU. Only the CPU is going to initialize the DMA controller by sending memory address as well as the number of words to be transmitted. Here we can see the DMA operation, the sequence of operations. The CPU executes instructions to load the memory address register, so from where the data should be transmitted, load the word counter, how many words to be transmitted, load the function whether read or write operation to be performed, and then issues the go command. So upon receiving a go command, the DMA, direct memory access, performs the IO operation. So independent of the CPU between the IO device and the main memory. So that is called as the direct memory access operation. When the DMA takes overall control, the DMA takes overall control of the data transmission between the IO device and the memory. So there are two ways of data transmission. The first way is burst transfer, and the second way is cycle stealing. So as far as the burst transfer is concerned, whatever we have seen in the previous slide, so that comes under burst transfer. So we are going to specify the starting address and the number of words to be transmitted. Then the entire number of words will be transmitted once the DMA controller acquires the control. So until unless the entire data is transmitted, the DMA controller is going to hold the entire control of data transmission. So whereas in case of the cycle stealing, so it will be performed in a different way. So in case of cycle stealing, the data will be transmitted word by word. So one word will be transmitted from IO device to memory, and then the control is relinquished to the CPU once again. The CPU will start executing its own operations. So as the CPU is having more control, definitely the CPU also needs some of the memory content. Okay, to execute the instructions, CPU needs control of the memory also. Okay, so because CPU needs to execute the instructions, and the instructions are residing in memory, and DMA is going to perform data transmission between the IO device and memory. Now both the DMA as well as the CPU are going to access the memory. Okay, so DMA controller and the CPU both access the memory. So that is why there will be a memory access conflict. So however, because CPU is very fast, always the advantage will be with the CPU. The CPU will have more cycles to be executed. So that's why CPU will have, as CPU will have more cycles, it has more control over the memory. So that's why now the DMA is going to request for some of the cycles from the CPU, and it is going to steal some of the cycles, which is called as cycle stealing. So as far as the cycle stealing is concerned, the DMA controller will get the top priority and for the data transmission, and the data transmission will be performed by the DMA controller. So here the DMA controller steals the memory cycles from the CPU, because both the CPU as well as the DMA controller needs the same memory. So there must be some sharing between the CPU as well as the direct memory access controller. So that's why some of the cycles will be shared by the CPU and some of the cycles will be shared by the DMA controller. So during the execution of the DMA controller for data transmission, the CPU remains idle for some time until unless it gets once again the control. So this situation arises only whenever the same memory, that is the shared memory is accessed by both the CPU as well as the DMA controller. So if individual memory is accessed by the CPU as well as the DMA controller, then there will not be any memory access conflict. Okay, CPU can access its own memory which is required by the instructions, and the DMA controller can perform the data transmission with its own memory locations. So only whenever there is a shared memory which is shared by the CPU registers as well as the DMA controller, then only the problem occurs. So because during the data transmission, if the CPU accesses the same content, the data may not be updated and there may be data inconsistency. So that is why the CPU need to stop until unless the data is transmitted successfully, and then only it is going to access the data so that correct data will be sent to the CPU registers for performing the instruction execution. These are the two ways. One is the burst transfer, another one is the cycle stealing. So coming to the DMA transfer, the entire DMA transfer which is actually connected with all the different components of the computer system. Here you can see this is the CPU, this is the DMA controller, this is the random access memory, that is main memory, and this is the IO peripheral device such as your disk, magnetic tape, or some other IO device. So initially IO device is going to send the DMA request, direct memory access request, which is going to send to the BR control signal. BR means bus request. That is, the IO device is going to request for the bus, and then this bus request will be transmitted from DMA controller to the CPU. The DMA controller is going to ask the CPU for the bus, by sending the BR request. So then the CPU will decide whether to grant the bus request or not, and it may grant the bus request by initiating the control signal BG. BG means bus grant. Once the bus is granted, then the CPU is going to relinquish all the buses, and it will be in high impedance state. High impedance state means it will be an open circuit, so it is not going to perform any transmissions with the buses. So once bus grant permission has been given to the DMA controller, then the DMA controller is going to send the DMA acknowledgement to the IO peripheral device. So now the DMA controller will be in active mode, and it is going to select the address. It is going to select the address based on the DMA select and the register select, and through this address it is going to connect to the main memory. It is going to connect to the main memory and decide which of the operation need to be performed, whether the read operation or write operation need to be performed. So you can see here the read operation as well as write operation can be done between the DMA controller and the CPU registers, between the DMA controller and the main memory. So DMA controller here represents the IO peripheral device. So based on the read or write control signal, so the read operation or write operation will be performed, and the specific data will be transmitted between the two devices using the data bus. So here you can see the data bus is connected to both the CPU registers as well as the DMA controller. So like this, data may be transmitted between the CPU and the main memory. Data may be transmitted between the IO device and the CPU registers, and data may be transmitted between the main memory and the IO devices. So all possibilities are there. So in this diagram we can see all these possibilities, all these different possibilities. So whenever the bus grant value is equal to 1, then CPU has granted the DMA controller for the entire buses. Then the data transmission between the CPU and the main memory will be stopped, and the data transmission between the IO device and the main memory will be resumed. And similarly, whenever bus grant option is 0, then the CPU is going to take over the control, and the data transmissions will be between the main memory and the CPU registers, and the data transfers between the IO device and the main memory will be stopped. So like this, the operation is carried out using the direct memory access data transfers. So the next topic is input-output processor. Input-output processor. So as we discussed previously, so even though in case of direct memory access, even though the data transmission is carried out by the direct memory access controller, DMA controller, the control signals must be passed by the CPU only, because CPU can only execute the instructions. The processor can only execute the instructions. So even the input-output instructions must also be executed by the CPU only. So there is no any other processor inside of the computer system which is going to execute the. That's why in the next level the scientists thought that why don't we introduce the second processor in the computer system in addition to the CPU? Why don't we introduce another processor especially to perform the input-output operations? So that is nothing but the IO processor, input-output processor, IO processor or input-output processor. So using this input-output processor, it acts similar to the CPU to perform the data transmissions using the direct memory access. So here you can see number of peripheral devices are connected through the I/O bus to the input-output processor. The input-output processor is directly connected to the memory unit, so as well as the central processing unit. So previously the input-output instructions must be executed by the central processing unit because only the processor can execute the instructions, even though they are I/O instructions. However, now the I/O instructions execution is transferred to the input-output processor, so that input-output processor can initiate the data transmissions as well as stop the data transmissions by executing the I/O instructions. So now there are two processors in the system. So one is a central processing unit CPU, so which is going to execute the memory reference instructions, register reference instructions, and there is a separate I/O processor, input-output processor, which is going to execute the I/O instructions. So like that, it is we are going to bifurcate two different processors so that these two different processors are going to perform their own individual operations, and accordingly the burden on the CPU will be reduced drastically, because now the CPU is used to execute only the memory reference instructions as well as the register reference instructions. So that's why the burden on the CPU will be reduced, and the I/O processor is going to perform all of the I/O operations within the computer system using the direct memory access technology. So that's why in most of the computer systems at present they are going to use the DMA controller to perform the data transmissions using the I/O processor. So that is about the I/O processor. So as far as the I/O processor is concerned, how the operations are carried out using the CPU as well as the I/O processor. So let us consider the CPU operations and the I/O operations. Initially, the CPU is going to send instructions to test input-output processor path. Then the I/O processor is going to transfer the status word to memory. If the status OK, then send start I/O instruction to the I/O processor, and then access memory for the I/O processor program. So once memory is accessed for I/O processor program, conduct the I/O transfers using the DMA, prepare the status report, and perform the I/O operations, especially with the input-output processor without the intervention of the CPU. So during this time period, the CPU continues with another program. So it is going to execute the memory reference instructions as well as the register reference instructions of another program, so that both CPU is executing its own operations, and IOP, input output processor, is going to execute its own instructions, IO instructions. So after the IO transfer is completed, so send an interrupt signal to the CPU, request the IO processor status, transfer the status word to memory location, check the status word for correct transfer, and then continue. So like this, the operation between the CPU as well as the input output processor is carried out. Here the main logic is the CPU continues execution with another program, whereas the IO processor is going to conduct the IO transfers using direct memory access. So ultimately, even though there is an IO processor, some little bit of intervention is needed by the CPU, because the overall control is with CPU. That we should not forget. So until unless the CPU generates the starting address, even the IO processor cannot do anything. So that little bit of intervention will be there even if there is an IO processor in the computer system. The IO processor cannot act completely independently. That we should remember. Okay. So that is about the complete description about the direct memory access. Direct memory access is a very important concept, because in all the modern day computers we are going to deploy the direct memory access. And the last topic in this fifth unit, first chapter is serial communication. Serial communication. So what is meant by serial communication? So already we have seen serial communication as well as parallel communication. In case of the computer system, within the computer system, how the data is transmitted, either we can use asynchronous serial transfer, or we can use asynchronous parallel transfer, synchronous serial transfer, synchronous parallel transfer, all these concepts. However, here the serial communication is actually performed in case of data communication processor. Data communication processor. Okay. So whatever the communication we have seen till now is within the computer system. Then what about the data communication between two computers? So the data communication between two computers is generally carried out using the data communication processor. So for example, now we are accessing the internet, or we have connected several computers using LAN network. Then there must be a data communication processor which is going to perform the serial communication between any two devices. So between any two computer systems, between a computer system and a mobile phone, between any two mobile phones. So then the data communication processor actually performs the role. So the data communication processor is going to perform the data transmission between any two devices, So to perform the data communication, so definitely we need an interconnecting device known as the modem. What is meant by modem? Modem means modulator, demodulator. Modulator, demodulator. So this modem actually converts the digital signals into analog signals, and analog signals into digital signals. So in the olden days, we were using the telephone lines to actually have the internet and connect two different computer systems. At that time, we were transferring the digital information into analog information because telephone lines were analog at that time. So as well as once the data is received at the receiver end, we are going to transfer the analog signals into digital signals. For that purpose, we are using the modem, modulator, demodulator. So in case of the serial communication, we need to check for the errors, because data is transmitted serially, either character by character or bit by bit. So we can transmit the data in two different ways, either character by character or bit by bit. So if you transmit the data, if character by character, then we are going to check for the errors using the longitudinal redundancy check. Longitudinal redundancy check. How this longitudinal redundancy check will work is, so this longitudinal redundancy check will work for character oriented data transmission. So whenever we are going to transmit several characters, for example, I am going to transmit the characters S, M, A, R, T, something like that. Then to make sure that these characters are transmitted properly, then we'll have a special character, parity character, which is going to verify whether these characters have been transmitted successfully or not by having the redundancy check. The type of checking is called as the longitudinal redundancy check. Similarly, we can also use a cyclic redundancy check for any errors. It is popularly known as the CRC, cyclic redundancy check. So which is also used for checking the errors. So this is a polynomial code obtained from the message bits by passing them through a feedback shift register containing a number of exclusive OR gates. So like that, we are going to use the cyclic redundancy check for verifying the errors. So if there are errors, then what we are going to do? we are going to retransmit the data. Once again, retransmit the data. Okay. So there are two ways to actually control the errors. One is the error detecting codes. Another one is error correcting codes. So this CRC as well as LRC are error detecting codes. So once the error has been detected, then what you are going to do? You are going to retransmit the data once again. So therefore, there will not be any problem. However, to perform the error correcting, it is more difficult. It is more difficult because you need more complex algorithms for error correcting. So coming to the way of data transmission between the sender as well as the receiver, there are three different ways of data transmission. The first one is simplex data transmission. Simplex data transmission means only one way. So we can transmit the data either from sender to receiver or from receiver to sender in one direction only. So in one direction only. So we cannot send the data in from other direction. So the best example is broadcasting. For example, if you consider the radio, then the transmission will be from one way only. The radio station is going to send the programs in the air. Then the transistors are going to receive the programs using the radio transistor. So there is no way of sending the feedback. The users cannot send the feedback using the radio communication. So that is of type simplex type. Next, half duplex. Half duplex means if it is a sender, if this is the receiver, sender, this is receiver, this is sender. Okay. So half duplex means the sender can send a signal to the receiver and the receiver can send a signal to the sender, but not at the same time. Okay. So only one after the other. The best example for half duplex is walkie-talkie. So in case of walkie-talkie, only the transmission is possible as half duplex. So that is, the sender is going to talk something and then he or she is going to tell over. Then the receiver starts talking. Okay. So in case of trains, we can find the walkie-talkies. The driver as well as the guard of the train are going to talk with walkie-talkies so that the proper signal is there or not for the train to proceed. So similarly, the children also play with walkie-talkies. So in walkie-talkies, we have the half duplex. So as far as the full duplex is concerned, so at the same time, the sender can send signals to the receiver as well as the receiver can send signals to the sender at the same time. The best example is for full duplex is telephone. So you can talk to a person and that person can talk to you at the same time. So that is the type of data communication is called as the full duplex data communication. So these are all occurring. Why we are talking all these things. So because we are discussing about the serial communication between any two different devices, not in the same device. So whatever the concepts we discussed previously, they actually occur in the same device between the two devices, between the two components. Same device between the two components. Now different devices. That is the actual difference between the previous explanation and this explanation. You need to note a point on that. So as far as the protocol is concerned, so for any communication there must be a protocol. What is meant by a protocol? A protocol is nothing but some rules and regulations that should be followed is called a protocol. So basically there are two types of protocols as far as the serial communication is concerned between two devices. The first way is character oriented protocol and the second way is bit oriented protocol. So as far as the character oriented protocol is concerned, so here we are going to control the character oriented protocol using the ASCII communication control characters. So we already know what is meant by ASCII. ASCII is American Standard Code for Information Interchange, which is going to occupy 7 bits of storage. So it contains capital letters A to Z 26 characters, small letters A to Z of 26 characters, numbers 0 to 9 of 10 characters. In addition to that, it contains several special characters. So these special characters can be used for communication control as communication control characters. Here you can observe several communication characters of 7 bits each. So the first communication character is SYN, which is represented as the meaning of this SYN is synchronous idle. So which is going to establish the synchronism between the sender as well as the receiver. It is going to synchronize the sender as well as the receiver. And the next signal is SOH, start of heading. So this entire communication is actually used to transmit the data from the sender to the receiver successfully. So SOH represents the start of the heading of the block message. STX is going to represent the start of the text, precedes the block of the text. ETX represents the end of text, terminates the block of text. EOT represents the end of transmission, concludes the transmission. So which means that the transmission has been successfully completed. ACK represents acknowledgement. So it is going to send the affirmative acknowledgement. NAK represents negative acknowledgement. So that is it says that it has not received any of the data. ENQ represents inquiry if terminal is on. ETB represents end of transmission block, so which is going to perform end of block of data. DLE represents data link escape. It is a special control character. So these are the control characters so which are actually represented using the ASCII code for the character oriented protocol. And the next protocol for the character oriented protocol, how the message format will be represented is like this: synchronization from sender, synchronization for the receiver, start of header, start of text, actual text, end of text, BCC. So this is the actual control of the entire character oriented protocol. Here BCC represents the block check character, which is used to check for any errors. Already we discussed about the LRC, longitudinal redundancy check. So in LRC, we discussed that we are going to use a special character for checking the parity. So this BCC block check character will be used for that particular purpose. So here, what is the actual data to be transmitted? The actual data to be transmitted from sender to receiver is only this text. All the remaining characters are used for control information for the successful transmission. Okay, so the actual data to be transmitted is only this text. So remaining all are control information to successfully transmit the data. See, once again, two synchronization characters are going to synchronize the both sender as well as the receiver. So SOH represents the start of the header, header represents the header, STH represents the start of the text, the actual text, ETX represents the end of the text, BCC represents the block check character. So one typical message of character oriented protocol will be like this. And then second type of protocol is bit oriented protocol. So in case of bit oriented protocol, there is no constraint of we need to use the ASCII format and only we are going to use 7 bits, something like that. The bit oriented protocol does not use characters in its control field and it is independent of any particular code. You can use any type of code for control information. So what is the frame format for the bit oriented protocol? Let us see. So there will be a flag, there will be address, there will be a control information of 8 bits. So there will be information of any number of bits. There will be a frame check with 16 bits and once again there will be a flag. So this is the start of the frame. This is the end of the frame. The start of the frame as well as the end of the frame are represented by 2 flags whose values are same. And we are going to provide the address with 8 bits. We are going to provide the control information with 8 bits and we are going to provide the actual information of any number of bits and then we are going to provide the frame check with 16 bits whether the data has been successfully transmitted or not or any errors have occurred during the transmission. So that will be checked using the frame check. So like this we are going to implement the serial communication and these are the topics that must be learned in case of serial communication. So serial communication is actually between 2 devices, not within the same device. So whatever the concepts we discussed previously comes under same device, different components. But now this serial communication is actually is going to perform data transmission between 2 devices. That is very important. So that's all about the 5th unit first chapter. We have literally covered each and every topic in the 5th unit first chapter. Hope you understand the logic. That's all for now.